Alright, you probably know we had some record cold temperatures. Well, I don't know if they were record, but they were extremely low. The lowest I've seen, I think, in Middle Tennessee. I think it got down to about -4 in this part of Middle Tennessee, and that's pretty cold for here. So it's time for a roundup of what were the early impacts on the conifer and broadleaf evergreen collection. And this is going to be a long video, so fair warning. And I'm starting off by looking at the green giants, and they appear to be completely unaffected by -4, which is expected. This tree is a conifer, obviously, and very resilient. So no problems. And I'll just show you this one non-affected tree, but I will tell you that pretty much every other conifer was not at all affected by -4 Fahrenheit. I will look at the cryptomeria though. I don't know if you can tell this or not, but it has a strange purplish hue to it now, which cryptomerias normally do change color a little bit in the wintertime with some bronzing, but I don't think I've seen this dark purplish color on it yet. So I don't know what the long-term impact will be on the cryptomeria. I'm hoping no long-term impact. But that is the one exception to the conifer rule I stated earlier. The cryptomerias do look a little different after -4. But the rest of the conifers are unaffected. So not affected at all. So let's move on and take a look at what was and what wasn't affected in the broadleaf evergreen category. Starting off with Rhodolea henryi, Hong Kong rose. At first glance, it seems good. It was always dark green, although the leaves are a little strange now. I don't know how this one is turned upside down other than wind. And it kind of barely moves when you let go. So I don't know. This one looks better than others as of now, but I think it's probably going to take longer to know for sure how the Rhodolea did. I've got it in a very protected spot, surrounded by tall evergreen conifers on all sides, pretty much. There's one open side. So from wind, it was about as good protected as you can get, but there's no protection from the temperature. So we'll see. The top of it here had already been killed by earlier frosts, so that's not a result of this freeze. The question is the rest of the tree. Don't know yet on Rhodolea henryi. Okay, here's a very fantastically good result. This is the Elysium parviflora, the anise tree, and I was amazed. This tree seems to have had no effects whatsoever, and it's fairly exposed to north winds. So if you're thinking about Elysium parviflora and you're worried about hardiness in zone 7A or wherever it gets to -4 rarely, then I say yes on Elysium. It's pretty good. Right next to it, the Centennial Girl Holly, I think that's what this one is, has turned black. And I've seen this on a few other plants. Probably not a good sign. Let's see if we can look at the underside of some of this foliage. There's still some green on the underside, so don't yet know what to make of it. But the top has been pretty badly burned by the cold, I would say. Let's look at the higher leaves. Higher leaves show some blackening on the underside as well, so there's no doubt there was extensive cellular damage to this tree when the temperature got that cold. Will that result in the death of the tree? I'm not sure. If the tree turns completely brown while it's trying to regrow, will I wait around for it? I don't know yet. I haven't decided what I will or will not keep in the ground based on this freeze, because it is pretty rare. Very rare, in fact. So I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but this is the result. Centennial Girl Holly turned black. Looks pretty badly burned. Here's the English laurel, otherwise known as cherry laurel, otherwise known as skip laurel. Basically, you see them everywhere as hedges. The Autolucan cultivar, I think this is just the regular English laurel, and this one is not that badly affected. It's a little darker than it should be. The undersides look pretty okay. I've seen others, though, around that were very badly burned, especially ones that were exposed to strong wind. So this one is semi-protected on one side. English laurel did okay. And right next to it over here, the Turnstroemia gymnanthera. Oh, by the way, the species of this is Prunus laurosoracis. Back to this, Turnstroemia gymnanthera. This is labeled a Clayera in the nursery trade. It's not really a Clayera, but you can see right off the bat, pretty badly burned. Black leaves all over. Don't know if I'll keep it. The underside, not looking great either. This little foliage area at the top has already gone brown on the underside. So, pretty bad result on the Clayera, quote unquote Clayera. It's not a true Clayera. Interesting. Here's the viburnum, Prague viburnum. It's a hybrid viburnum actually. So a viburnum retidophyllum hybrid with viburnum utile. Both Chinese species, I believe. The leaves are pretty curled up. Dark green, almost black. Not much green on the inside, uncurled side of the leaf either. So I don't know what to think about it. Here's a barberry, Berberis replicata, and it's got a lot of browning on the leaves here. Pretty brown. It's gone an off yellowish olive on the underside as well. So I don't know how well this is going to survive either. Not great on the barberry. Okay, this is the Elaeagnus pungens. Regular Elaeagnus purchased from Lowe's, I think. Ebbing silverberry. Nice and green. Once again, I'm impressed by the Elaeagnus, and actually this is just a pot healed into the ground because I didn't get the chance to plant it. So I need to get it planted. Probably would have done even better. So wow, Elaeagnus, what a tough plant. I'm going to plant more of this in the future. The Japanese privet, also purchased at Lowe's. Ligustrum recurvifolia. Even before the cold temperatures, it had some frost burning on the highest leaves, but everything else seems to have started to turn black now. So this one may be a total loss. Not as strong as it should be, the curved leaf Japanese privet. I think we're just a little too far north, so it was a good attempt, but probably coming out. And it's not, I don't think it's root rot resistant either, so that's another strike against it since I have that in my planting. Here's the Pyracantha coccinea, otherwise known as the firethorn. Not looking good. Lots of black and brown leaves. The formerly brilliant orange berries have shriveled up and been frozen, so I'm not impressed really with the resistance of the Pyracantha. It didn't really handle this temperature very well. Look at all the burning and scorching on the leaves. I may or may not keep this one, I'm not sure. Back in the Shady section of the evergreen collection, and first we have Pieris japonica. I think this is Valley Fire, Mountain Fire, something like that. Purchased from Lowe's. Did pretty good, not a surprise. Pieris is supposed to be pretty tolerant of cold temperatures, so I would say thumbs up on Pieris. And right next to it we have a regular rhododendron. Now the leaves are a little droopy and curled, but they normally do that in cold weather. The key here is I don't see any brown or black. They're a nice deep green. So rhododendron, also thumbs up. Now there's the Japanese yew. It happens to be right here. No problems, as I said, with the conifers. And this Japanese Akuba japonica, also a little curly on the leaves, but pretty green, I'd say. I mean, very dark green, maybe a little scorching, but better than some of the others in the collection. I would say it mostly made it through unscathed. Oh, and here's that other variegated yew that I just planted. I'm assuming no damage there. I mean, yew should be tolerant. So let's find out. Oh, also you can see I'm putting in rock. It's a dual layer rock. It's going to have this tan small grain rock as a base, and then the large gray beach pebble over the top. And this is going to save me the effort of trimming grass all year round. Also kind of an experiment. Just getting started. The shade section at the back was the first to have it. There's a Chinese hemlock, and it's going to spread from there. Oh yeah, we need to check that Clayera over there, a true Clayera. Okay, here's the real Clayera, Clayera japonica. This happens to be a variegated variety, and had already suffered some frost damage before at the very tips. You can see this is completely dead and crumbling, but the rest of the foliage is remarkably green, I would say. No, I don't see any new damage after the coldest temperatures, so that's a big surprise. So maybe thumbs up on the true Clayera, even though it's thumbs down on the Turnstroemia gymnanthera that's marketed as Clayera. So interesting. Here we have the sweet box, Sarcococa ruscifolia, and I believe it had already had some frost damage from an early frost back in November, so this is not new. The rest of it still a nice deep green on the top, green underneath, so not a surprise. Sarcococa ruscifolia also expected to do well, and it did. Now here is a surprise. The Mahonia belii has a lot of dark, almost black patches on the leaves in places. It didn't do quite as well. I thought this Mahonia would be pretty much ironclad, but it looks like it got a little scorched. We'll see. If you remember earlier on in the season, I lost 3 of the 4 branches of this Cinnamomum japonicum. This is a variegated variety. Japanese camphor tree or Japanese cinnamon tree, whatever you want to call it. And I had this one branch left here that was the lone survivor, but the -4 temperature seems to have taken care of that. This is dead at this point, so total loss on the Cinnamomum japonicum. I wouldn't try it in Middle Tennessee. The native mountain laurel, Camellia latifolia, came through with flying colors. No problem. I don't think a single leaf changed color during this -4 temperature. So now, will it survive in the summertime? Different story. It had unusual leaf loss, but wintertime, not a problem for the mountain laurel. In contrast, right next to it, we have the Japanese viburnum, I think, or Chinese. It's a viburnum awabuki chindo, purchased from Home Depot, and I've got a lot of black and brown scorching on the leaves. You can see the underside has gone brown there. Not a good sign. I'm sure this tip is dead. Oh, yep, there we go. Crumbles under the finger. So, yeah, thumbs down on the Chindo viburnum. When it comes to these ultra cold temperatures, it's not resistant. And you know, maybe you could go a decade without another temperature like this, but my philosophy is, now that I know a freeze can come along and destroy these plants, why would I continue growing them? I want to plant something that's going to be alive no matter what happens, if possible. So probably won't make a special effort to put this in the ground. This is just a pot healed in temporarily, so I'm sure I'll put something else there instead. Right next to that, Sweet Bay Magnolia seems to have done really well. I had complained in the past about how some sweet bays seem to be semi-deciduous, losing their leaves, but this one surprised me. It doesn't seem to have taken any real damage in these ultra cold temperatures. I mean, maybe there's a slight yellowing here and there, but compared to the others, I'd say it did very well. Here's the Laurel petalum. Laurel petalum chinensis, I forget the species name. Purchased at Lowe's at a steep discount, luckily, because it's pretty badly scorched and burned here. I'm not really impressed with Laurel petalum. I see them everywhere. I was kind of on the fence about them to begin with, and this winter damage has pretty much made me decide I'm not a big fan, so I probably won't go to the trouble of planting it all the way. It was just healed temporarily. I don't know. We'll see about that one, but check out the damage. Brown everywhere. Trocodendron aurelioides, wheel tree, a very rare broadleaf evergreen, and becoming more rare in my backyard because, as you can see, it's brown and black and pretty much destroyed. So that one's coming out unquestionably. Don't try it. Resist the urge to try the wheel tree in Middle Tennessee. Cool looking tree before it got frozen, but it's totally toasted now. Okay, this one surprised me. This was a holly, Ilex latifolia, from nurcar.com. Very good nursery, by the way. Arrived in great condition. But these cold temperatures have pretty much turned it black, which I'm assuming means dead. I mean, that looks pretty dead to me. Black on the top, brown on the bottom. That's not how it's supposed to be. So, looks like Ilex latifolia might have been dealt a killing blow by -4. Unfortunately, that one's a surprise. I was expecting all the hollies to be pretty resilient. Now here's an interesting surprise on the plus side. Urea japonica, a nice little shade-tolerant broadleaf evergreen. There's a little bit of blackening on the tips of the branches, but for the most part, the foliage is still green. So that's a good thing. Not totally surprising because urea should be pretty cold tolerant, but it did very well, I'd say. Kind of slow growing from what I hear, and takes a while to establish verticality, but at least for now, it's still in the running. I'm going to keep growing it. I'm going to plant it in. I had it temporarily healed. Try to get this thing planted in a permanent spot somewhere. Another look at a cryptomeria. Here you can really see the bronzing contrasting with the green of the loblolly and the incense cedar behind it. So these conifers do change color depending on the temperature. A little green flecked in there, here and there, but a lot of browns and purples on the cryptomeria. Amazing foliage though, texture-wise. Southern Magnolia. This is the Edith Bogue cultivar, purchased from WilsonBrothersGardens.com, and I chose this one because it was the most cold resistant, and it looks like I got my money's worth. There's a little browning on one or two of the leaves, but overall, I would say it came through -4 very well. If you want to plant Southern Magnolia, I can definitely recommend Edith Bogue. A vigorous grower in the summertime, green all winter, and pretty resistant to cold. Check out the leader there. I don't know if we can focus. There we go. It looks mostly undamaged by the cold. There we go. Looks good to me. And that's the main concern. So, hooray for the Edith Bogue cultivar of Southern Magnolia, Magnolia grandiflora. Now this one also surprised me. This is the Liberty Holly, and I'm going to put the Thuja occidentalis in the background just for some color contrast. You can see it's supposed to be green, but it's purplish black at this point. And I probably would be even more surprised by this because there are so many Liberty Hollies planted around here, except I also know what it's a hybrid of. Look at that. Looks pretty bad. I'd say that's dead and dying. It's a hybrid of I think 3 Chinese species of holly, one of which is Ilex latifolia, and as we saw a minute ago, the pure species Ilex latifolia was badly burned, and it looks like this hybrid, including that latifolia, is also badly burned. So I'm gonna have to take this out, put something else here. I'm pretty sure every bit of this foliage is gonna turn brown and fall off. The Nellie Stevens holly is a little bit darker than normal. Maybe there's a bit of blackening here and there, but Overall, I'd say it's just a dark green, so Nellie Stevens holly did good. That is a hybrid. I think Alex cornuta and aquifolium, so English holly and Chinese holly hybrid. Nellie Stevens available everywhere, pretty much. Looks like it did pretty good. And this is a Japanese camellia, Camellia japonica. Maybe a little bit of browning on some of the leaves. Definitely drooping, but color-wise, still green, I'd say. Possibly too early to tell, but I think the Camellia japonica made it. Now, if this holds and doesn't later on turn brown, I would think that this might be the biggest positive surprise out of the whole experience. The southern wax myrtle, Myrica cerifera, and it's a got a little bit of browning at the top, but that was already there from an early November frost. The rest of it remarkably green. I was expecting this to really turn brown and be one of the weakest ones, but it surprised me. And now I'm a huge Myrica cerifera southern wax myrtle fan, assuming it doesn't later on turn brown. But it looks good now. Undersides look good. Still nice and dark green on the top. If this holds out, it's going to be a huge win in terms of finding a cold-resistant, fast-growing broadleaf evergreen species, because this was very fast-growing last summer. Carolina laurel, Prunus caroliniana, pretty green. No real problems, I'd say, and that's as expected. I've got this tiny Callistemon citrinus, which is an Australian species that I purchased from nurcar.com, I believe. And it had some browning already due to the cold, but I don't think I noticed any changes after the extreme cold. So that's interesting. Maybe it just turns a little brown in the winter and then bounces back in the spring. We'll see. This is the Woodlander's Hardy cultivar, so it's supposed to be cold hardy, but maybe not -4 Fahrenheit cold hardy. I don't know. I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. Even though it looks terrible, it kind of already looked like that, and I don't see it looking any worse. Okay, here's the Coast Redwood, and checking for cold damage on the Coast Redwood is familiar territory. Looks like there may have been a little, but on the whole, I would say it looks pretty good. These buds at the tips may have frozen, but I would say the foliage looks better than the last time I tried it. This is the Inman Select Coast Redwood from WilsonBrothersGardens.com. Maybe a little browning on a few of the needles, but a lot of them look really good. Fingers crossed for this Coast Redwood. Here's the Dragon Lady Holly. Also turned dark brown, black, dark purple. Choose your color. But it doesn't look like it did too well. Let's see if we can check the underside of these small branches, small leaves at the top. A little bit of green still left, but on the whole doesn't look that great. We'll see what happens with the Dragon Lady Holly. I got this at Home Depot or Lowe's, maybe. Or maybe I think I got this at treecenter.com. It's another good website. I think this is the end of the road for the banana shrub, Macalia figo. It was already on its last leg before -4, and I think these leaves are probably going to turn brown completely and fall off. So, thumbs down on the banana shrub for Middle Tennessee. Next to that, we have the Dahoon holly, which seems to have held up pretty well. Ilex cassine. There was a little damage earlier on in an earlier frost because it didn't really harden off by the time I got it in the ground, but the mature foliage looks pretty green, so I am cautiously optimistic on Ilex cassine. I believe if you see foster hollies around, that's a hybrid between Ilex opaca and Ilex cassine, so opaca being the regular American holly. Looks pretty good. Back here, let's just check in real quick on the Camellia davidiana. It was yellow before, still yellow now. Last year I lost all the foliage due to cold weather, and now it's got this pretty bad yellowing all summer long and seems to have intensified in the winter. So I don't know what to think about Camellia davidiana. Okay, there's the another Elaeagnus pungens. This is the Fruitlandia cultivar, I think, from the treecenter.com. Pretty green. So once again, Elaeagnus, very good. Temporarily healed in now, but I'm going to get this in the ground as soon as it warms up enough to do so. There's a little browning here and there, but compared to the others, I'd say that's a nice green for going through -4. Next to that, the Drymus lanceolata, mountain pepper, another Australian species. It had a little browning all winter long, and I don't think it's really changed much after going through -4. The underside looks terrible too, so doesn't look that good. I'm not sure I'm going to even make the effort to fully plant it. Picked this up at Home Depot on a whim, kind of, and have not been very impressed with its cold tolerance. And continuing with the Australia theme, this is the Eucalyptus neglecta omeo gum, I believe. A lot of browning, as expected, but we'll see. Not as bad as expected, to tell you the truth. The last of the Australians here is the Eucalyptus parviflora, otherwise known as the snow gum, and I would say kind of good, actually. There's a little browning here and there. The edges are a little red, but on the whole it looks amazingly good. So I think it's pretty good. Eucalyptus parviflora. Sorry, Eucalyptus pulsiflora. Wrong species name. Just make sure you clear that up there. Snow gum Eucalyptus pulsiflora. I know I said I wasn't going to update on the conifers, but as I'm going through the collection, I'm realizing some of these conifers are worth an update. This is the Podocarpus chinensis, and last year it was turning brown in the teens, but this year it came through -4, pretty much 100% green. Now there's a little brown at the top here, but this happened in November when some late season tender growth was frozen back by an early frost. But look at the rest of it. Amazing. Can't believe it came through that temperature so well. This and the southern wax myrtle are the two that I'm very impressed with. And I recently took a trip to Orlando, went to some theme parks, and I noticed that Podocarpus and wax myrtle were planted very extensively as evergreen borders and things next to the roller coasters and all that. And maybe that's because they've done their homework and found out that if it does get exceptionally cold, they're not going to lose a bunch of their evergreens with these two species. So I'm very positive on the Podocarpus macrophylla. Sorry, I think I may have said Podocarpus chinensis earlier. That's not it. Podocarpus macrophylla and the Myrica cerifera. There it is again. Another close look at the Podocarpus macrophylla. Just checking the bottom here. No damage at the bottom either. This little bit of browning on these leaves here is from actually last winter. It never even lost the foliage from the winter of 2021, I guess. it kept it even though it had turned brown. It's a little browner underneath. Podocarpus macrophylla. I'm very surprised. Okay, a few more risky plants that didn't make it. Looks like this Pittosporum tobira has probably been roasted by the cold. And right next to it, Indian hawthorn, Raphiolepis indica, turning black and brown and probably will die pretty soon. Check that out, all the green gone. Didn't make it. Bought this at Lowe's, I think. And it was pushing the northern boundaries to try it here, and unfortunately, this was the year when it got to -4. Last one, finally. This is the Distilleum racemosum, and it made it. Not a problem anywhere, I would say. Maybe a few brown tips on a few of the leaves, but overall, thumbs up for Distilleum. It did pretty good. So that's the end of the first round of cold damage. I'm sure I'll check back in later with another video and let you know how things finally turned out.